So we're recording now. This week we're going to do the story of the broken tablets. It's a very strange story. Hopefully you'll pick up some parallels to the previous stories. And I'm going to let the verses talk for themselves. We're going to play the video in 3 parts. First part is going to be the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai. The second part will be the golden calf, which led to the breaking of the tablets, the luchos, and then the second set of tablets. So we had 2 sets of luchos, the first set and second set. The first one got smashed as a result of the golden calf. Let's start off. We're on page 142. All right, it's going to go through the Torah, the verses. But what I'm going to do is just do this video. Bear with me. If it doesn't work, we're just going to have to read it.
What's that, a meeting?
Okay. All right, so it does work in principle. Can you see in here? Yeah, okay.
In the 3rd month of the children of Israel's exodus from the land of Egypt, on this day they arrived in the Sinai desert, and Israel encamped there opposite the mountain. Moses ascended to God, and God called to him from the mountain to say, "So shall you say to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel, you have seen what I did to Egypt. I carried you on the wings of eagles and brought you to me. And now, if you will listen to my voice and keep my covenant, you will be my own treasure from among all peoples. You will be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation." Moses came and called the elders of Israel, and he placed before them all these words. And all the people replied in unison, and they said, "All that God has spoken, we will do." It was on the 3rd day, when it was morning, there were thunder and lightning and a thick cloud upon the mountain, and the sound of the shofar, exceedingly strong. Moses brought the people out from the camp toward God, and they stood beneath the mountain. God descended upon Mount Sinai to the top of the mountain. God spoke all these words to say, "I am God, your God, who took you out from the land of Egypt, from the house of slavery. Do not have any other gods before me. Do not make for yourselves a graven form or an image of anything in the heaven above or on the earth below. Do not bow to them and do not serve them. Do not take the name of God your God in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to sanctify it. Honor your father and your mother. Do not murder. Do not commit adultery. Do not steal. Do not bear false witness against your fellow. Do not covet anything that is your fellow's. And all the people saw the sounds and the torches, and the sound of the shofar, and the smoking mountain. And the people saw and trembled, and they stood from afar. And to Moses he said, "Come up to God." Moses entered within the cloud, and he ascended the mountain. And Moses was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. And when he had finished speaking with him on Mount Sinai, he gave to Moses the 2 tablets of the testament, tablets of stone inscribed by the finger of God.
Okay, so we're on page 145 in your books. 145. So the one event that we have, which is probably the most life-changing, not just for us as Jewish people, but for the world at large, for everyone, is probably the giving of the Torah. Right? We did a course previously called The Gifts of the Jews, how Torah had an effect, not just on the Jewish people, on the whole of human civilization, sanctity of human life, freedom of choice, morality, equality before the law, social justice, charity, quest for world peace. Right? We did this in the previous course. All that comes from Yiddishkeit. All that comes from the Torah. And what we have as norm today in Western society, because a lot of the Western society is based on Christianity, a lot is based on Torah. Sorry. So a lot of the humanity that we have today, a lot of the laws that we have today, a lot of social justice we have today is based on Torah. Okay, so the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai is the biggest life changer for humanity at large, right? And what's unique, we have on page 145, Moses himself says, "Ask now, after the early days that came before you, from the day that God created man upon earth, from one end of the heavens to the other, has there ever been the likes of this great thing? Or has anything like it been heard? Has the people heard the voice of God speaking from within the fire as you heard and lived?" Right? And then there's a verse that we say on we say on Simchas Torah, Ata Hare Saladas, Kashem Hu Elikim Enid Movadai. The English is, you were made to see, to know that God is the God. There is none else besides him. Okay? So Moses himself says, this is a unique, life-changing experience that took place when Hashem gave us the Torah. Right? There's many reasons why. I want to focus on 2 of them. One of them is theological, and the other one is mystical. So I'm sure you've all heard of a book called the Kuzari. Right? It's written by someone called Yehuda Halevi in the 12th century. So I'm not sure if you've got a bio over there, but the Kuzari is a dialogue between this rabbi Yehuda Halevi and the king of the Khuzaris. So I'm just going to read here a little bit. It says, Khuzaria was a powerful kingdom that flourished between the 7th and 12th centuries, what is today southeast Russia. In the beginning of the 8th century, the king and the ruling classes of the Khazara kingdom converted to Judaism. And over the next 3 centuries, many Jews found refuge there from persecution. But he doesn't say what the name of the place is called today, which cities they are today, but it's in southeast Russia somewhere. So, sorry?
Kazakhstan, isn't it?
Kazakhstan? Could be. Kazakhstan's not Russia anymore.
No, but it was then when, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not sure where it is, but it's a real place. It's real people. And the dialogue between Rabbi Yehuda Halevi and the king of the Khazarim is written in this book, the Khazarim. So on page 146, right, there's a text there. I'm not going to read it out, but I just say the point where he's saying is that all or most of all religions, you've got one person who comes along and he says, I had a revelation. God came to me and he said X, Y, and Z. You should listen to what I say. In contrast to Judaism, we had all the Jews around Mount Sinai and God revealed himself to all the Jews. So there's 600,000 registered Jews, between the males between the age of 20 and 60. So altogether, we've got about 2 million Jews sitting around or standing around the Mount Sinai, and God is speaking. The first two, the Ten Commandments, God himself spoke. The other 8 was by Moses. All the thundering and the lightning and what was going on over there, the spiritual experience that they had, it wasn't one person coming along and saying, I have a message from God. Is the Jews themselves could bite into it. They all experienced it themselves, right? So that's one idea that took place, was unique, that took place by Mount Sinai, right? Then we have another idea. I said before that pasuk from Simchas Torah, after Harei Ladas, you were made to see, to know that God is a God. What does it mean here? Saw God. God is not something physical. God's not something tangible that we can see. It doesn't mean we could see God. A bit of a funny way of describing the situation. Sometimes we do the Hebrew, we just mumble, and we sing it, or we say it, and we don't always focus what it's actually saying. And even when we do read the translation, we just skim through it. We may not focus what it actually means. It doesn't mean here that we were made to see. We were made to see God. So what I want to do is explain a little bit what seeing means in contrast to hearing. But we have on page 147, Rabbi Akiva says an amazing thing. It's from a medrash, right? Mechilta is a medrash. It says in Hebrew, Royan es hanishma, v'shemim es hanira. The Jews there saw what's normally heard, and they heard what's normally seen. If you're a professor in a laboratory doing all sorts of experiments, maybe you could see sound waves. I don't know. But the Jews at Mount Sinai, the Medrash says that they could see what's normally heard, they could hear what's normally seen. It sounds like a bit of a psychedelic experience. But I don't think the Jews were eating LSD at Mount Sinai. And I don't think God's just trying to show off his miraculous abilities, that he could change nature for us to see what can be heard and hear what can be seen. So what's going on over here? So let's just explain. The word Shema, to hear, also means to comprehend. When we say every day the Shema, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, hear Jews. I know in the English translation you've got this O, hear Jews. I'm not sure what the O means. But when it says hear, Jewish people hear, I can't hear you.
It's an Irish translator. Everybody has a surname, O'Toole, this.
All right. So, the commentaries say it doesn't just mean hear, it also means comprehend, understand. You know, when you say to a child, can you hear what I'm saying? Obviously, you can hear. He's not deaf, right? It's not just, can you hear me? It's, do you understand what I'm saying, right? are you taking in, are you absorbing what I'm saying? So we say Shema Yisrael here, it doesn't just mean here, it also means to understand, right? So we've got a way how we gather information. Either we can look at the information, or we can hear and understand the information. So on page 148, ask the questions as follows. It's in the square, the gray square over there. I'm just going to ask you in my own ways. Many of you, I assume everyone has read books, right? You read a novel. And then at some point, they make a movie from it. Which one's better? If you read the book or if you saw the movie, which one do you prefer? Okay, yeah, you're on mute. If you want to speak, you have to go off mute.
Well, the book and the perfect world, but you need time to read.
Okay.
If you have the time, then the book.
Your imagination of the book. You visualize what they're saying. The film is put on a plate for you.
Okay, so you're both saying the same thing. The advantage of seeing, the advantage of hearing, the advantage of watching the movie, and there's an advantage of reading the book. I want to discuss now the advantages of, but I just mean the difference. When you read the book, you read one detail. So Anna said it takes a long time to read the book because you read one detail, then another detail, and then another detail, and then you put together the whole picture.
I'm sorry, there's a lot of background noise. Could everybody just mute themselves? Sorry.
Okay, thank you. So with a book, you read one detail, another detail, another detail, another detail, and then you develop yourself the characters. You've got in your mind what you think the characters look like, how the characters behave, based on all the information that you collate together as you're reading and progressing in the book. When you watch a movie, you see the actual movie. You see the characters, you see what they look like. It becomes more to life. So there's an advantage of both. Sometimes you read a book and they say, wow, such a good book. I'm going to go and watch the movie. And you watch the movie, you're disappointed because you had these characters which were amazing. And then on the movie, they're not so amazing. So there's an advantage of both, but I want to focus now on things that you see. When you see something, you see the actual thing. So let's say you go sightseeing, you go to see a famous building, you look at the building, you see the actual building in one go. If someone else saw the building and they're going to describe to me the building, they're going to have to go through each bit of the building, and it's sort of secondhand information. It's the way they saw the building that they're describing to me. And I have to listen to every component, every detail of what they're telling me, how the building looks. And then I can put together a whole picture of the building. But if I went myself and I looked at the building and I saw it, I grasped the whole building in one shot because I see the actual building. I'm not getting something secondhand. That's number one. Number two, something I saw, at least if I saw it in real life, not if I saw it on a video or a film, but something I see in real life, it will then be absolute by me. You cannot convince me different. So if you go to Buckingham Palace and you stand outside there and you look at the beauty, the beautiful architecture and the shape and the design of Buckingham Palace, no one else can come along and talk you out of it that's different. No one can tell you it's going up to a triangle or it's round or it's this shape or that shape. You saw it yourself and you're absolute in what you saw. Whereas if I saw Buckingham Palace and I then explain to you and I describe it to you, then it could be, even though you've got a very clear picture in your head now, how it looks like, afterwards someone can say, it's not exactly like this, it's like this, it's like that. You say, maybe, I didn't see it myself. I heard it from another person. where something you saw yourself is absolute. No one can just the interesting halacha, Jewish law as follows: that a judge, when you judge for capital punishments, if someone murders, someone is accused of murdering someone else, the judge has to try and find ways to get him off the hook. Not to try and get him convicted, but trying to get him off the hook. Therefore, there's halacha that if one of the dayanim, one of the judges, is walking down the road and he actually witnesses the murder, he then cannot be the dayan, the judge on that case. Because by him it's absolute what's happened, that Mr. A murdered Mr. B, therefore he's got no way of trying to find leniencies to get him off the hook. Because something you hear is absolute by you. Whereas if you have separate witnesses, a separate dayan, a separate judge, then when he hears the information, when the judge hears the information from the witness, he'll always try and find ways, maybe it didn't happen, maybe we can get the guy off the hook. All right? But the bottom line is as follows, that something you see becomes absolute. And the third thing is that we are physical people, so we can only see physical things. We can only see real things. We cannot see spiritual things. We can study about it. We can sometimes feel it somehow, but it's mainly in the books. Because we live in a material, tangible world, so our reality is the physical material things. Anything spiritual we have to know by proofs. We have to have somehow it's written about it, we can understand a little bit about it. In fact, there's a rabbi who complained to the Almighty. He says, you've got the whole material world here in front of us, and he said, you can do this, but you can't do this. You want us to withhold from the material world, or various parts of the material world that is tangible in front of us, and you're promising us a reward in the world to come that we've never seen before. Something that's abstract, something that we can't see, that's what you're promising us as a reward, as an incentive to keep away from certain material things. Okay? So the bottom line is I want to say as follows. Something you can see is because it's tangible and real in front of you. Something that's not real, tangible in front of you, in our world, something physical, that for those things, it needs to be told over to us or explained or we read about it in a book. Okay? Now let's go back to Mount Sinai. By Mount Sinai, it said they saw God. I'm not sure if they actually saw God, but we're trying to say here that godliness, the Almighty, became so real, so tangible, that it's as if they saw it. So when it says that something that they normally hear, they saw, something that's usually abstract, that you need someone to tell over to you. Someone who's had that experience to tell it over. That became very real and very tangible to the Jewish people at Mount Sinai. So not only was there a big revelation of godliness, the Jews were able to tap in and relate to it. And that's what it means when Rabbi Akiva says what's usually heard, in other words, something that's usually abstract became, they could see, became their reality, just like now you can see the table in front of you, you can see your furniture, you can see your table, your chair. That is very real in front of you because we live in a material world. That's what happened to the Jews by Mount Sinai. So if you go on page 148, right? So this is from the Rebbe. He says, this is what the giving of the Torah achieved, that they saw what is heard and they heard what is seen. And he explains, that which is ordinarily heard, i.e. spirituality and godliness, which can only be perceived through hearing, in other words, secondhand. At the time of Mount Sinai, the people of Israel perceived with a certainty tangibility of sight. They saw godliness. On the other hand, material things which were ordinarily seen, they now heard, and as it became secondary, the materiality of the world was like something that is perceived by hearing or by logical deduction. It's like an absent-minded professor. He doesn't really notice what he's wearing. He doesn't notice what he's eating. He is eating, he's wearing clothes, and he just goes to the wardrobe, take out a shirt and put it on. But whether it matches his suit or whether his tie and his socks all coordinates together, it's not in his world. You know, him, clothes matching, coordinating is an abstract concept to him, because what's alive by him is academia, is what he's studying, and so on. This idea happened by Mount Sinai. What's normally abstract, godliness, spirituality, that became a reality. And therefore, automatically, the materialism, where he's going to eat good pizza and sushi and have a good sauna, that became secondary. That became something that they saw, that became something they heard rather than something that they saw.
What I was quite interested in was, I believe that at the time of the giving of the Torah, we know that each person in their life returns to, within anybody, returns to the earth to try and achieve 613 mitzvahs. That means men and women. You were, one stage man, one stage woman. But this generation, the generation that's just passed, were in fact possibly the witnesses of this.
It's brought down that our generation, I mean the generation before the coming of Mashiach, is a reincarnation of the generation who went through the desert.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? So we could be talking to our previous lives, right?
Yeah,
yeah. And the truth is,
what I found quite interesting, because you in fact mentioned with the numbers some time ago that there could be effectively 4 million children, men, under the age of 20, whatever it is, going through around Mount Sinai, 4 million. Because if you had 2 point whatever it is children, and then the husband and wife and whatever it is. It's funny because when people say, but this was all trumped up, it wasn't HaKadosh Baruch Hu saying anything. I said, but show me a text, any text, 4 million people there. Did somebody say this didn't happen? Has somebody written down anything that's been passed to generation say that this didn't happen? Only now we're saying something. Some people say, this didn't happen.
If you Google the Kuzari experience, then you're going to get arguments against what we've just been saying. Right? But let's move on. So what we've got here, Mount Sinai was a phenomenal spiritual experience. The first 2 commandments, God himself tells them, the first 2 commandments are believe in Hashem and do not serve idols. It was a life-changing experience, not just for the Jews, but for the whole world. And the Jews were spiritually charged. God, so to speak, did a reset. We had various sins that took place from the creation of the earth. We had the tree of knowledge of Adam and Eve. We had people before Noah, right? That whole generation. The people that did the Tower of Babylon. You had a whole load of negativity that took place. Here, there was a reset. God reset the world, similar to how it was initially when he created the world, similar to how it was when Noah came out of the ark, when he came out of the table. There's a reset over here. The Jews hear from God himself, do not do idol worship. What's the next thing they do? The golden calf, all right? So this is what we're trying to understand. The Jews were so spiritually charged how come they went and transgressed and did the sin of the golden calf. And then we're going to see how it got sorted out. And then we're going to apply it to our lives, right? How we can relate this in our lives. So we're on page 149. I want to do the next verses. So I'm going to do share screen and the next part of the video. I'm going to just go through the slides that we're missing. And then if you don't hear the video, then somehow let me know. Okay, so the single most impactful event was giving of the Torah. Uniqueness of revelation at Sinai. It was a public event, right, called the Kuzari effect. That is directly experienced by everyone. You are made to see, to know. What's the emphasis on seeing? They saw what's normally heard. So something that you see is a first-hand experience. It's more convincing and is physically real. Hearing and understanding, hearing is understanding. I guess explain. By the revelation at Mount Sinai, they made real the truth of God. It became really tangible. So something that's usually heard and understood, we could actually see it and tap into it. That's how much well we can relate to it. Can you see and hear this? You can hear? Okay.
Yes.
The people saw that Moses delayed in coming down from the mountain, and the people massed upon Aaron, and they said to him, "Arise, make us a god who will go before us. For this man Moses, who brought us up from the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." Aaron said to them, "Remove the golden rings that are on the ears of your wives, your sons and your daughters, and bring them to me." He took them from their hand, and he formed it with a graving tool, and he made it into a molten calf. And they said, "This is your God, O Israel, who brought you up from the land of Egypt." They arose early in the morrow, and they offered up burnt offerings, and brought peace offerings. The people sat down to eat and to drink, and they got up to make merry. Moses turned and went down from the mountain, and the 2 tablets of the testament were in his hand. The tablets were the handiwork of God, and the writing was the writing of God engraved on the tablets. And it was when he drew closer to the camp and he saw the calf and the dances, Moses' anger was kindled, and he threw the tablets from his hands, and he broke them beneath the mountain.
Okay, so we just read now, the Jews here, right? I'm the God who took you out of Egypt. Don't have any other gods before me. Within 40 days, it wasn't like 40 years, 100 years. It was 40 days. They already are making an idol, pagan idol worship, and they're dancing around this golden calf and saying this is God. And somehow they forgot this divine revelation that they had. What's going on over here? This whole production of Mount Sinai with the thundering and the lightning, everything stood still, and the birds didn't tweet, and the rivers didn't move. Everything stood still, and God said, "I am the Lord who took you out of Egypt." Was that whole thing a failure? God messed things up, or God does something and doesn't know what's going to happen over here? There must be something deeper over here.
The gold didn't come from women, did it?
No,
They
the women
wouldn't
wouldn't
give
give
their
their gold
jewelry.
to the golden calf, so the men used all their own gold.
Yeah. So the belief could be that the women were not part of all this. It was the men.
Yeah, the question is how these men could all, and it was all the men except for the tribe of Levi, so all 11 tribes, they all joined in this golden calf. And it wasn't like one or two people. It's pretty much all the Jewish males, okay? The women more spiritually inclined maybe, but the men somehow, 40 days after this intense, phenomenal divine revelation, all of a sudden, they throw everything behind and say, that's it. The question is even bigger. They counted 50 days. So we count the 49 days from Pesach, from the second day of Pesach all the way to Shavuos, right? This mitzvah started when the Jews left Egypt. We were told we're going to receive the Torah. We're excited. We're anticipating the receiving of the Torah. So we count every day. They counted every day all the way until Shavuos. So they were excited to receive the Torah. They received the Torah. And then we just read about the phenomenal divine inspiration and revelation that they had in a real tangible way, as if they could see it. And 40 days later, boom, everything gets thrown out of the window. It's similar to Adam and Eve. Right, the very first lesson we did. Adam and Eve were created by God himself. Similar to the Jews who had a reset by Mount Sinai, and they had this phenomenal divine revelation. They're in the Garden of Eden, which was created by God himself. They were given one mitzvah, not to eat from this fruit for a period of 3 hours. They then mess up, and they then have to leave the Garden of Eden. And that sort of changed the whole of humanity. Till then, life was easy. There was negative energy, but that was like a concept rather than part of their life. Through eating from the tree of knowledge, so we explained that the word knowledge in mystical terms means to connect. Negative energy became part of their life, right? And from that point onwards, they had to work hard. They had to struggle. So the same idea we're going to find over here. Right? The luchos are 2 cubes. There's 2 cubes. I know on the video here they were oblong, but they weren't oblong. They're actually 2 cubes, and they were engraved with the letters. So the word to engrave in Hebrew is charut. And if we play with the words in Hebrew, which we do very often, the word charut, to engrave, if we change the vowels, it could mean cherus, meaning freedom. So again, it says in the pasuk, which you have on page 150, text 6, it says that the words were engraved on the luchos, on the tablets. So the Hebrew for engraving can also mean, or if you play with the words, it could also have the word cherus, meaning freedom. So we've got this double meaning where it says about the words on the luchos, the words on the tablets, either it means engraved or it could also mean freedom. So if we look at text 7, which is on page 151, then if anyone wants to volunteer to read, I know no one's usually keen to read. You gonna read? Ian, you'll read?
I can read, but I don't know if it comes over any well from the Zoom. Zoom sound is never very good. This is the meaning of what is written in Psalms 82, verses 6 to 7. I said you are divine, and that the supernal beings you are all. Indeed, like Adam, you will die. Had the people of Israel waited for Moses and not done that deed, neither Galut, the exile of the Jewish people, nor the angel of death would have any power over them. Thus it is written in Exodus chapter 32. The writing was the writing of God. Cherut, engraved on the tablets. What is the meaning of cherut? Cherut is freedom from exile, and cherut from the angel of death. When the people of Israel proclaimed, all that God has spoken, we will do, and we will hear. God said, I commanded one mitzvah to Adam for him to fulfill, and I likened him to the ministering angel. This people who will fulfill 613 mitzvot is not fitting that they should live and exist forever, but when they proclaimed, this is your God, O Israel, they became mortal. Said God, you followed in the ways of Adam, the first man who did not hold out for 3 hours, and on the 9th hour of that day, death was decreed on him. I said, you are divine, but because you followed in Adam's path, indeed, like Adam, you will die.
Okay, thank you, Ian. So, the story of Adam and Eve, plan A was they keep this one mitzvah of not eating the forbidden fruit, and then Shabbos would come 3 hours later. Then there would be no negative energy as part of our life. Therefore, human beings would not die, would live forever, and food would grow on trees, wouldn't have to work hard, wouldn't have to have the whole process of making bread and so on. Childbirth would be easy. Everything would be a piece of cake. But then they sinned. They ate from the forbidden fruit. Everything changed. We've got plan B. Man has to work hard. The same idea happened when God gave us the Torah. When God gave us the Torah, he pressed the reset button. Right? On your phone, you have a factory reset. God did a factory reset. And at that point, Jews or human beings were supposed to live forever, and things were going to be spiritually and materially good. But then 40 days later, when we sinned with the golden calf, we now end up with plan B, that we're back to how things were, that we need to work hard, and we're now not free from working hard, from struggle, suffering, and from death, right? So again, when God gave us a Torah, plan A was Chayrus, freedom from all these negative things. Because we sinned with the golden calf, we now have all these issues. That's what happened. So we don't know why it happened. We had this phenomenal divine experience. God becomes one with us. God's giving us a Torah like the marriage. Shavuos is considered like the marriage of the Almighty as the Chasam and the Jewish people as the Kala. 40 days later, we mess up. Why do we mess up? But what happens next? Right? The Jewish people repent. Moshe goes up on Mount Sinai. He asks God for forgiveness. And God says, okay, we'll go to plan B. I'll give you a second set of tablets. We'll get a second set of luchos. You smash the first one, I'll give you a replacement. You have insurance on your phone. You can get a second phone if yours gets smashed. The same thing happened here. God gives us a second set of tablets. But there's a difference here. The first set of tablets, the actual material, the actual stone, God is the one who brought it, and God is the one who engraved it. The second set, Moshe had to himself acquire or get hold of the material, the stone, and then he took it up the mountain, and again God engraved the words on the stone. So I'm going to show the third part of the video, and here we'll just go through. It's on page 153 in your books. We're just going to go through just narrative what happens. So as we do that, I'll go through the videos. I'll go through the slides that we missed. Okay, so the question was, how did the Jews sin so soon after the great revelation of Mount Sinai? The word charutz, to engrave, also, if you change the vowels, can mean freedom, liberation. The first tablet We then did the golden calf, and then the tablets got broken. The same idea in the Garden of Eden. They sinned with the tree of knowledge, and then we were expelled from the Garden of Eden. So the parallel is we start off with a state of perfection, we then sin, and then we have breakdown of plan A, and we have to move on to plan B. Can you see and hear it? Okay. Huh?
God said to Moses, "Carve yourself 2 stone tablets like the first, and I will write upon the tablets the words that were on the first tablets which you broke." He carved 2 stone tablets like the first. And Moses rose early in the morning, and he ascended Mount Sinai as God had commanded him. And he took in his hand 2 stone tablets. And he was there with God for 40 days and 40 nights. And he wrote on the tablets the words of the covenant, the 10 commandments.
Okay, I'm going to leave on the share screen for a moment. So we've got here the first set of tablets, the second set of tablets. The first set of tablets, they sinned, so it got smashed. So we then have a second set of tablets. We'll just go through the differences between them, but how it relates to the state of the world, how it relates to the tablets themselves, and how it relates to the Torah. And then we'll eventually get to how it relates to us in our life, in our real life today. So the first tablet represents a state of perfection. God made a reset to the world. The second set of tablets represents death and struggle. We sinned in between. We now have struggle. The first set, God made the actual stones himself. The second one, Moshe had to carve them out and bring them to the Almighty. And then the third point here is the Torah. The first one is the written Torah, the 5 books of Moses. And the second one is the written Torah plus the oral Torah. Okay? I'm going to stop the screen share. And we're going to go through these details slowly, bit by bit. Okay? So I said before, the first set God actually obtained, he procured the actual stone and he engraved on it. The second one, Moshe is the one who had to bring it. So if you have a look on page 150, line 27, the tablets were the handiwork of God, and the writing was the writing of God engraved on the tablets. That's the first set. The second set, which is on page 153, line 1, God says to Moses, "Carve yourself 2 stone tablets like the first." So here Moshe had to organize it. "And I will write upon the stones." Right? Then God engraved it. And the words that were on the first tablets, which we broke. So whatever was on the first one, I'll write on the second one, more or less, a few minor differences. But the main difference here, who was the one who acquired the actual stones? Both stones, the content came from God. The difference is the medium, how it was delivered, who the actual stone, who procured it, who did it come from. Okay, that's one difference. Then we have another idea. If we go to page 155, we're going to read from the Medrash. And the Medrash says that don't get too stressed that we not got the first lochos, because the second one comes with a bonus. Right? So if you read text 9, said God to Moses, "Do not be distressed over the first tablets, which contained only the 10 commandments. In the second tablet, I'm giving you also halacha, medrash, and agadah." So we know we've got the written Torah and the oral Torah until about 2,000 years ago. The only thing we had in writing was the 5 books of Moses, the Chumash, with the scriptures, the Nach. All the other information was given over orally one to the next, from generation to generation. Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, he saw that people are sort of losing all the information that we need. So he transcribed it in the Mishnah. And that's the first time all the halachas were actually written down in an official way. And he wrote it very concise because people knew more or less all the law and all the halachas how to do it. We just wrote it in an orderly fashion. And then the next generation of the Talmud, they saw that people were forgetting even how to understand the Mishnah. So they wrote the Talmud and they wrote more details and they debated and thrashed it out. And then you had the period of the Gaonim, and then you had Rishonim, the early Rishonim, later Rishonim. Each generation had to write it in more and more detail. So much so in our generation, you have to have YouTube videos with tutorials how to do everything, which is really, really good. If you want to put tefillin, you can get the YouTube video tell you how to put tefillin. If you want to shake a lulav, you want to make challah, there's YouTube tutorials exactly how to do it. But
I mean, there's a pointer to this. There's a pointer to this. How come Moshe went up into the cloud and came back with 2 tablets?
they were free. Black Friday deal. So what we're learning here from the Medrash is for the first 40 days, when God gave us the Torah, there was only the idea of the written Torah. There was no such a thing as oral Torah. But then when the first one broke and God gave us the second tablets, God told Moshe, don't be too stressed over the first one, because with the second tablets, not only will you get the written Torah, you're also going to get the oral Torah. Right? The same idea in the Talmud, which is on text 10, page 155, same page. Had Israel not sinned with the golden calf, they would have received only the 5 books of Moses and the book of Yeshua. Why? Because the verse says, much wisdom comes through much grief. Which seems a little bit funny over here. We know how to keep the mitzvahs, all the details of the mitzvahs, we know from the oral Torah. So a mezuzah, it says, "Uchatavtam al mezuzot beitecha." You should write them on the doorposts of your house. What should I write? How should I write it? Which doorpost? Which house? All these details I only know from the oral Torah. So what was the point of plan A of just giving us the written Torah? And why did it take for the sin and the smashing of the first luchos that we could get the second luchos with the oral Torah? And the oral Torah is not just that we can make up ourselves what we want to say. With the oral Torah was given instructions, which in Shachris in the morning, towards the beginning, we say a piece. Rabbi Yishmael, Omer Yishmael says, "B'shleish esrei midos haTorah nidreshes." The Torah is interpreted in 13 ways. I think there's actually 32, but we talk about 13 every single morning. So if you've learned the whole written Torah and you abide by the rules, you engage your brain, right? You engage your brain to understand what's written in the Torah. You can't just make up your own stuff. But the oral Torah is engaging our brain. Even in the time of the prophets, you go through the Nach, go through scriptures, the prophets, none of the prophets could give a halachic ruling based on prophecy. They could give instructions. They could give us inspiration in their prophecy. You can't use prophecy to tell us Jewish law. Jewish law is either written in the Torah, or you use the rules that we have with the Torah to engage our brain to interpret what the Torah is saying. And this is work in progress. Even today, the rabbis have to work out what the Torah is saying and applying it to everyday rules. So when lockdown happened from March, there's a whole load of new applications of halacha that we had to try and work out. So, for example, to have a minyan, you need 10 men in a room. But if the law says you can't daven in a room and you want to daven outside, how does it work if you're davening outside? And in Israel, where they have apartment buildings, so you can have families staying on their own balcony. So no one's mixing, no one's intermingling. Everyone's safe on their own balcony. Can I do a minyan of a whole bunch of families on their respective balconies in their house? Now, usually the halacha is that for the 10 people in the minyan, you need to see each other. At least the chazan needs to see all 10 of them. So can I make a minyan like that? So new situations arise. So we need to redefine or reapply the halacha that's there. Or for example, if you have a street, a small street, and this we have in London, you have a whole bunch of families on one side of the street, a whole bunch of families on the other side of the street. Everyone's staying in their gardens, in the front gardens, but I have 5 men on one side of the street, 5 men on the other side of the street. Can I have a minyan like that? The problem is that you can't have a road running through a minyan. So how can we make a minyan like that? The rabbis worked out that in such a situation, we can do it because that halacha is referring to benching, not referring to a minyan. But the point I'm trying to say is the oral law is work in progress. Even though the written law is pure divine revelation, it's the actual word of God, but we can't always apply it to every single situation without engaging our brain and applying it. So that's why we have the oral law that goes through all these details. And that's why we have on page 156, why couldn't God just give us the written law? Because within the written law, he can't have every single scenario that's going to take place for the next few thousand years. Then the Torah wouldn't be this big. The Torah is going to be this big. It's going to have endless, infinite pages to it because of so many scenarios. Therefore, God gave us the written law with instructions how to interpret it, and that's work in progress happening all the time. So, what would you say is a better system? God explaining everything to us, plan A, the written law, or us engaging our brain and interpreting and working out and deciphering what is God trying to tell us, what the halacha is. Which is a better system to have? So Ian, you're saying that plan A was a better system, God himself telling us exactly what to do.
Yeah.
Right? That is more spiritual, more godly, more intense. However, if we go back to page 155 and we look at text 9 and 10, find it here. Text 9 and 10, God said to Moses, do not be distressed over the first tablets which contained only the 10 commandments. The second one I'm going to give you also has halacha, midrash, and agara. So it seems that God thinks that plan B is better than plan A. Right? And then the Talmud also says, oh, if you work hard, you'll get much deeper understanding. So it seems like us toiling, us working hard will give us a deeper and better understanding. So it seems to be that plan B seems to be more beneficial than plan A. And if that's the case, why did God not start with plan A? Why did God not start with plan B? Why do you have to wait for plan A to malfunction and then go on to plan B? Okay, so my question is, what is so much the advantage of plan? What is so much the advantage of? We understand the advantage of Plan B. We understand the advantage of the second tablets that came with the oral Torah, the Talmud, the Mishnah, and Kabbalah, and all that. But there was a Plan A. And if Plan A was the first plan, then that seems to be the primary plan. So we should have really been left with Plan A, because God doesn't make mistakes, as we established beforehand. But for some reason, God wanted a Plan A, and then he wanted us to have a Plan B. And to understand this, we're going to read something very strange that took place when God gave us the Torah. On page 143, your books, it says, Moses brought the people out from the camp towards God, and they themselves stood beneath the mountain. Hebrew says, Betachtis Hahar. So you could translate it that they stood at the foot of the mountain. Right? So you had a mountain, everyone standing around the mountain at the foot of the mountain. But the literal translation is that we stood beneath the mountain. So there's a Talmud on page 157. He's puzzled by this terminology. God, the verse could have been written a little bit clearer, that the Jews were standing at the base of the mountain. But it says we're standing beneath the mountain. So the Talmud text 11 says, this teaches us that God overturned the mountain over them like a cask and said to them, if you accept the Torah, fine. If not, there should be a burial. Right? So the Talmud says, God took Mount Sinai, held it over the Jews, says, you either accept the Torah, or boom, I let go, boom, and it falls on top of your head, and that's the end of you. Which is very strange, because the Jews had already said Nasa v'nishma. They already said we're going to accept it unconditionally. Nasa, we will do it. Ishmael will study and also to find out what's going on. But before we even read terms and condition, we're going to sign, we're going to accept the Torah. Also, I mentioned beforehand that the Jews anticipated in excitement the giving of the Torah for 50 days. So why does God need to force upon them? They have to accept the Torah. Why do you have to hold the mountain above their head? I don't know if you actually held the mountain over their head. It's just metaphorically. But why do you have to coerce them and force them? And the Rebbe explains, we'll read the text in a moment, as follows. It's based on the teaching of the Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe of Chabad. It doesn't mean he forced them in a fearful way, but he forced them in a way of love. Hashem showed them so much kindness, so much goodness, they had no choice but to accept the Torah. And here we're going to learn it, that he gave them so much divine revelation at that point that they automatically wanted to accept the Torah. I said, if you read page 158, text 12, right, how do we reconcile the saying of the sages that God overturned the mountain over them like a cask with the fact that the people willingly responded, we will do and we will hear with Nasa v'nishma? They already said, no problem, we'll accept the Torah. So the Rebbe says, the deeper meaning is as follows. When the people of Israel stood at Mount Sinai, only 50 days had elapsed from the exodus of Egypt, which was the most debased place in the world in the term of descendant character, as is well known. So God wanted to give them a super fast, in a fast lane, he wanted to make them into a mensch. So for 200 years, the Jews were living in Egypt. For 70 years, they were slaves. Right? And I've explained before in previous classes, a slave is like a robot. A slave will work what they're told to do. There's no initiative. I will wake up when I'm told to wake up. I'll go to sleep when I'm told to go to sleep. I will eat what I'm given. I will eat when I'm told to eat. I've got no initiative on my own. In contrast to a soldier's also ordered around. But the difference is the soldier's given a gun and told to use your own initiative. No one's going to spoon feed you who to shoot on the front line, when and how. Right? You have to engage your own brain. You have to engage your own training, how to conduct yourself on the front line. But a slave is a controlled person. He's controlled, and the advantage is he hasn't got to make any decisions. Just does what he's told, and he gets food and he gets lodging, and hopefully his master won't be too nasty to him. Then, after living such a life for 70 years, the Jews all of a sudden are free people. And God, in that 50 days from when they left Egypt to the got to Mount Sinai, God tried to do a speedy rehabilitation. Within 50 days, he wanted them to be a mensch. I'm going to give you the Torah. And you are now going to be responsible for your own destiny. You're going to be responsible for what you do every single day. You're going to have to be incentivized on your own to get out of bed in the morning. In Egypt, if you didn't get out of the bed, you got whipped by your taskmaster. Here now, there's no taskmaster over you. You have to get out of bed yourself, put on tefillin, comes Shabbos, you have to let Shabbos comes yourself. No one's forcing you to do it. You have to be a self-motivated, self-decision-making, having responsibility for yourself. You have to be a mensch. And this rehabilitation to change from 70 years as a slave to be now an independent thinking, free person, God tried to achieve this within a short period of 50 days. Super fast and too fast. So when the Rebbe carries on, this was not sufficient time for them to make the transition from one extreme to the other and achieve a genuine recognition of the value of the Torah. Rather, this recognition was forced upon them from above when the light of the Torah was revealed to them so powerfully so that they could tangibly see that the Torah mitzvahs were the ultimate good. I say again, God didn't force them with a stick. God let them appreciate the beauty of the Torah. God let them see with their eyes. In other words, it became tangible, the godliness, the divine revelation, and the goodness of the Torah. And that without them, the lives would not be worth living, in the most literal sense. They therefore proclaimed with all their heart and soul, we will do and we will hear. And they meant it with the truth. However, because they did not achieve this recognition in a progressive, methodical way by their own efforts, emphasis on their own efforts, but rather as a gift and as a flash of illumination from above, once the moment of revelation had passed, nothing but a faint impression of it remained. As we say, easy come, easy go. There are people, you can read about them, there's people who struggled for a long time financially, and out of the blue, they won the lottery. They won £1 million, £5 million, £10 million. Some of them, phenomenal amounts of money, both in the UK and abroad in other countries. And after a period of time, they squandered the money, and it's gone. And they ended up in massive debts and financially broken and emotionally broken. And you'd think, you struggled all your life. All of a sudden, you have money. You enjoy it, go on a holiday, buy a nice house, buy nice clothes, and so on. But just to blow your money like this, in the matter of a few years, these people blew their money because easy come, easy go. If you don't work for something, you don't appreciate it, doesn't become part of you. So when you go to work, you may not earn that much money, but it's your money that you worked for. So number one, you feel like a mensch. I worked for it. But number two, you cherish the money. You don't just squander it and throw it out. Every penny, make sure it's calculated. You spend on this, you spend on that. and you have sustainability. So you don't have as much money as if you won the lottery. But it's more real, it's more part of you. But this revelation that we received on Mount Sinai was like winning 10 million pounds on the lottery. I think this Friday night you can win 179 million pounds. All right. So it's a phenomenal amount of money in one shot, boom. But if it's not what you worked for, it's not mine. It's not part of me. All right. So I'm not saying you shouldn't win the money. You should win lots of money. But it's not what you work for, therefore it's not part of you. All right. So divine revelation doesn't change anything. Miracles don't change anything. It just empowers us to accomplish on our own a little bit more. We have in life moments of truth. We have in life, it could be Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, you have an inspiration. But that inspiration will not last more than a few days or a few hours or a few minutes unless we can somehow bring it in our life in a tangible way. So if you're inspired in Rosh Hashanah, you make a decision that this year I'm going to do an extra mitzvah. Or a mitzvah that I've done, I'm going to do it in a better way. Same thing with marriage. A person can stand under the chuppah and have this intense feeling of love to your spouse. But that intense feeling of love for your spouse under the chuppah will not last you the whole marriage. You still need to work hard during the marriage to keep it going. So we need to have both. But something that just comes as inspiration, as a miracle, as divine revelation, it's easy come, it's easy go. Right? A divine revelation can shake us out of where we are, point us in the right direction. But the journey we make has to be our journey. So when we leave Egypt, either all the 3,300 years ago, and we get to a point of divine revelation by Mount Sinai, 40 days later, we can fall back to where we came. Why? Because that inspiration that we had wasn't an inspiration that I developed. It was given to me. So it's easy come, easy go. I've mentioned this before. One of the beauties of Chabad Hasidus, we have the book called the Tanya. And the Tanya is inspiration from the first Rebbe of Chabad, the Alter Rebbe, and he wrote it in a book. So even though the Alter Rebbe passed away 250 years ago, we can still have his inspiration today by learning through the Tanya and teaching us the art of self-discipline, amongst other things. And one of the points he's writing in the Tanya is that we need to work within ourselves to develop discipline and inspiration, and gives us the tools how to develop inspiration and discipline. And there's a story of a student of the Alter Rebbe who lived in a particular town where there's a student of another Rebbe. And that other Rebbe, he was a very passionate Rebbe, and his chassid would go to him from time to time and would be inspired with the passion. So it turned out that this Chabad chassid would go to shul in the morning, and he would study and try to meditate and trying to get inspiration before he'd start davening. It didn't always happen. He had to go to work, so he put on his talis and he davened and went off to work. It bothered him that the chassid from the other Rebbe would come, as he would come through the door, he would be inspired and he would daven with enthusiasm and inspiration. So this chassid, the Chabad chassid, was really upset. So eventually he goes to the Alter Rebbe and he explains to him what happens every single morning. And the other chassid, I think his Rebbe is called Reb Chaikel, someone, he comes in with enthusiasm and a chayas and a passion. And I work so hard and I don't have that same passion. So the Alter Rebbe explained to his chassid as follows. The other fellow, the passion he has is from his Rebbe. It's his Rebbe's passion within him. Whereas you, what is demanded from you, you should develop your own passion. Therefore, your passion isn't as strong. Therefore, your passion may take longer to come, but it's yours. And ultimately, it will last longer. The other fellow may have more passion, but it's not his passion, it's the passion from his teacher. So now we'll focus a little bit on the advantage of hearing, and then everything will fall into place. When you hear something, when you hear about something, so I went and saw a beautiful site, I saw a building, and I explained it to you. I tell you every single detail of it. You have to work hard to build up the picture. I tell you one detail, another detail, another detail, and then eventually you've got the whole picture in your mind. And the understanding that you have will be a lot deeper than just seeing something. Even though when you see the actual thing, the something you work, you build slowly will last a lot longer. The same thing, let's say, for example, you learn Gemara, you learn Talmud, or you study anything. If you hear a lecture, you may hear it. So if you hear a lecture from the biggest professor around on this subject, you'll hear it, you'll get the most of quantity and quality of knowledge in one shot by this talk, by this lecture. But then a week later, you may have forgotten all the details. Whereas if you worked yourself, right, you have to prepare a paper, you have to prepare a speech, you have to prepare a class. You work on it yourself, and you work and you research it yourself, and you write it out word by word. It may not be as deep or as knowledgeable in quality and quantity as a big professor, but it's something that will stay with you for the rest of your life. Why? Because you worked on it really hard. It becomes part of you. It's something that you created, you're active in creating it. It's something that changes you. Something that you see doesn't change you. Something that you hear, again, you understand by working it out yourself and working hard to understand it yourself. May not be as much in quality and quantity, but it becomes part and parcel of yourself. And that is why the Talmud says on page 160 that in the ark where they kept the luchos in the temple, not only was the second tablet there, the first tablet was there as well. The broken first tablet was there as well. Which teaches us two things, which is similar to what we've been discussing in the previous classes. The second tablets represent not just the written law, but also the oral law. The oral law, I said before, is something we need to use, engage our brain based on the principles of learning that we are taught, but we engage our own brain to try and work it out ourselves. So, contrast to the written law, which is just divine revelation. Divine revelation is easy come, easy go. But we need to have both of them. In the ark, you had both the remainder of the first luchos, the first tablets, which is God's divine revelation. We need the inspiration. We need that moment of truth that inspires us. But it does not last long unless we engage ourselves, unless we engage our brains, unless we apply ourselves, and it becomes part of us. So if we compare that, for example, to the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve started off in the utopia that was created by God. Then they sinned, they had to leave and go to a world where they had to engage, they had to work hard. So that's what life's all about. It's about us engaging, us working, but at the same time, we need the inspiration from the Hashem, we need the inspiration of divine revelation. And that's how now we can understand, how is it possible that the Jews sinned with the golden calf so soon after such intense divine revelation? And the answer is very simple. Even though they heard from Hashem, I am Hashem, do not do idol worship. 40 days later, they do idol worship because it's not something that became part and parcel of them. It came from Hashem. It was easy come, easy go. They were like Teflon. It just came off, non-stick. And what we need is for it to stick. And the only way for it to stick is if we engage ourselves and work hard. So should we have just the second tablets? No, because without the divine inspiration, it's going to be very static. We're going to be caught in our life as it is. We'll never have the opportunity to go out of the box and move on. You know, unfortunately, a lot of people currently are losing their jobs. And they can get very depressed. But many people, their work's not working out. So as one door closes, it's an opportunity for a new door to open. So the divine inspiration is the new door that's opening constantly to inspire us to move out of our box, to move out of the confinements that we are in. So we need that Rosh Hashanah moment. We need that Yom Kippur moment that gives inspiration. But at the same time, we need to grab hold of that inspiration and take it with us into the year and work hard with it. So the question is now, we're on page 160. What broken tablets do you carry with you in your own life? I'm not asking anyone to answer, but the reality is that we all experience failures, right? In the course of our lives, we've broken things that are precious to us, whether it's relationships, opportunities that we have seemingly have damaged beyond repair. So what should we do? We've got two ways to approach it. We could succumb to dejection and despair. We could lose faith in ourselves, give up our hopes and dreams, and trudge through life convinced that we are failures. That's one way to deal with it. Another way to deal with it, we move on. We put the failures behind us. We bury our broken tablets in our past, and we try to forget them as we turn over a new leaf. So, should I get rid of my baggage and just move on? Or do I hold on to the previous experience? And the answer is, need both. Right? The Talmud is telling us that in the ark they had the broken pieces from the first tablet and the new ones, the second tablets. The second tablet represents the idea of moving on. But at the same time, the pieces of the first tablets were still kept. Why? Because the broken tablets of the first tablets may be broken. They may be beyond repair, but they are still your first tablets. Right? So the Talmud is telling us, preserve them. Hang on to them. Because remember the energy that you had then. Remember the excitement that you had then. Remember the inspiration that you had then when you started off on your life's endeavors. These are the foundations and the starting points of everything that you will start with your second tablets. So we need to have the inspiration from the first tablets, the inspirations from the beginning of those first experiences that we had. Something we're going to hang on to. Even though we're going to move forward and focus on the second tablets, on our new beginning, our new way in life. So the Torah means hurrah, a lesson. It's not just something that happened 3,300 years ago. It's something that's happening with us in our life today. On the one hand, we need to work hard on developing ourselves through our journey with all its ups and downs. At the same time, we need to hang on to the divine inspiration and revelation that we had, the excitement that we had when we started off our lives. All right. This is the end of the class. I just want to play the summary, and then after that, if you have any questions, ask any questions. Okay, so we've got these slides, the written Torah and the oral Torah. The written Torah is the Ten Commandments with the 630 mitzvahs, called the Five Books of Moses, and the Scriptures. The oral Torah is interpretation, exposition, and the Talmud, the Mishnah, the Shulchan Aruch, and the Zohar. The written Torah is pure divine revelation, whereas the oral Torah is the human understanding of this divine revelation. Which is more effective? Is it the divine revelation represented by the first tablets, or is it human development represented by the second tablets? There's the second one, human development is more sustainable. But again, we need to have the God's inspiration. We need to have the divine revelation to give it vitality. What does it mean they stood beneath the mountain? They stood under the mountain.
Yeah.
They were coerced. We were coerced to keep the Torah. We already said that everything that God tells us we will do, that means we weren't coerced. We did it from our own free will. So what happened there wasn't coerced by a rod, but rather we were overwhelmed by divine revelation. So we've got divine revelation versus human development. Divine revelation, however intense and great it is, it's a temporary inspiration, whereas human development is permanent transformation. Seeing is objective, hearing and understanding is subjective, and then again, that's why it lasts longer, because you're actively involved with it. Both tablets were in the ark, that means both inspiration from above and change through personal struggle. The broken tablets, you got failure, dejection and despair, or forget and move on. And the answer is use failures as an inspiration. Okay, so let me just close.
The broken tablets. 1.
Oh,
The giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai, where the entire people of Israel directly experienced the most
you can hear that?
Yeah.
Yes, cut off now, but let's do it again.
unequivocal divine revelation in history is the foundational event of Judaism. At Sinai, we saw what is heard and heard what is seen. Godliness and spirituality, which are ordinarily apprehended secondhand or heard, were perceived with the immediacy and veracity of sight, whereas the physical world, which is ordinarily seen, was relegated to a lesser realism of something that is heard and understood. And yet, shortly thereafter, the people violated the first commandments they had heard directly from God by worshiping the golden calf, prompting Moses to break the tablets. How was this possible? 2. At the giving of the Torah, God restored for the people of Israel the state of tranquility and immortality that existed in the Garden of Eden. Worshipping the golden calf was essentially a repeat of Adam and Eve's transgression and resulted in the breakdown of this ideal state. 3. God granted the people the second tablets, but these differed from the first tablets in a number of significant ways. This time, mortality and struggle were not abolished. In the first tablets, both the content and medium were from God, whereas in the second tablets, the content was divine, but the medium was of human manufacture. The first tablets embodied only the written Torah, God's direct instructions to us. The second tablets incorporated also the oral Torah, the process by which we expound the written text and apply it to our lives, making the Torah a partnership of divine revelation and human understanding. 4. Divine revelations and miraculous experiences shake us out of our complacency and set us in the right direction, but they do not truly change us. True and lasting transformation will only come by means of a second tablets process in which we struggle to build a relationship with God. The first tablets were a seeing experience, an overwhelming revelation to which we were the passive recipients. The second tablets are a hearing experience, something that we actively create step by step with our own faculties. 5. We need both sets of tablets, as indicated by the fact that the Ark in the Holy Temple contained both. The first tablets alone cannot create anything lasting in us, but they are the foundation for everything that we achieve. 6. There are two common reactions to the failures we experience in our lives. A. Despair. B. A desire to start from scratch and leave our past behind. The fact that the broken tablets were preserved in the Ark presents us with a third option: to carry these broken pieces with us, connecting with the original passion and overwhelming energies they hold, and making them the foundation for our future achievements.